Friday, March 8. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark yesterday created a stir when he announced that the government was giving back $14 billion to taxpayers. Dr. Clark, in his first full budget debate since assuming the position in March last year, announced a revenue budget which went much further than the past no taxation budgets from the government.
After almost 20 years of consistent tax increases and no new taxes last year, it is now time to give back. It is a right thing to do. Mr. Speaker, we still have the challenge of high debt and growth below what we want. Therefore, we have to give back in a way that is calibrated to have a stimulative impact on growth.
He said that Jamaica would now be able to end its current borrowing relationship with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, having fully lived up to its commitments under the current precautionary standby arrangement which ends in October. It is understood that the space for the tax reduction in this year's budget was created by an agreement with the IMF to reduce the 7% primary surplus target by half a point. The revenue measures revealed in Parliament by Clark, including the loss of revenue to government in brackets, are increase in the general consumption tax GCT threshold to $10 million, up from $3 million. Reduction in the rate of transfer tax payable on the transfer of property from 5% to 2%. Increase in the transfer tax threshold applicable to the estate of deceased persons from $100,000 to $10 million. Abolition of the long controversial minimum business tax and abolition of the asset tax payable by non-financial institutions. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark has announced several changes to the existing loan agreement at the Student Loan Bureau, the SLB.
For new loans, Mr. Speaker, application of payments will be made to the most outstanding balance first. Historically, Mr. Speaker, for decades, payments made to the SLB by borrowers were applied and have been applied first to the penalties, then to interest, and only after you overcome those, then you get to the payments, the principal. This, Mr. Speaker, is not in keeping with the practice of financial institutions generally and makes servicing of SLB loans harder to service.
Clark said the changes will be effective April 1 as the SLB seeks to ensure that financing for tertiary education continues to be affordable and accessible and that the revolving loan fund becomes sustainable.
Eligible borrowers in good standing with the Student Loan Bureau will be entitled to a reduction in their interest rates of 2 percentage points. In keeping with the reduction in the BOJ policy rate over the time since the last adjustment. So, for the postgraduate loans, April 1st, for people in good standing, will be reduced from 9% to 7.5%. And, Mr. Speaker, for the pay-as-you-go loan, which are the super-secured loans, they'll be reduced from 6% to 4%, Mr. Speaker.
A performance audit of the SLB last year revealed that borrowers were becoming increasingly delinquent, a situation which, along with up to $2.5 billion in loan write-offs, has adversely impacted the agency's liquidity position and forced it to rely on government subsidy to support loan disbursements. The Principal Revenue Collection Agencies, Tax Administration of Jamaica, TAJ, and Jamaica Customs Agency, JCA, will be implementing strategies aimed at improving efficiencies during the new fiscal year. This, according to the government's 2019-2020 fiscal policy paper, which was recently tabled in the House of Representatives by Finance and Public Service Minister Dr. Nigel Clark. According to the document, TAJ will focus on building on the notable gains recorded during the 2018-2019 in a bid to satisfy taxpayers and stakeholders' expectations over the medium term. Strategic engagements and objectivities identified in this regard include continuously improving voluntary compliance, institutional strengthening, building human capital synergies and culture, and enhancing corporate governance and culture. The focus on enhancing voluntary compliance will entail incorporating the 4 primary components: registration, filing, payment, and accurate reporting. The National Water Commission, NWC, has been shortlisted by Global Water Intelligence, a world-leading publisher on water sector issues, for a Global Water Award in the category of Water Leader of the Year 2018. The Global Water Award consideration, which the NWC said was not solicited by the Commission, is in recognition of the entity's, quote, position as the island's primary water service provider and its aggressive multi-million US dollar non-revenue water reduction program, and a number of other transformative strategic programs, end quote. The Global Water Award ceremony will take place on April 9 at the Natural History Museum in the United Kingdom. Political Ombudsman Donna Parchment Brown has said she will be meeting with representatives of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, which is supervising the bushing program in Portland Eastern. Mrs. Parchment Brown said she will also be reviewing documentation for the program as part of her investigation into the allegation from People's National Party, PNP, that state funds are being used to carry out the work. The government has denied the allegation. PBCJ recognizes International Women's Day. It is a worldwide event that celebrates the achievements of women from the political to the social while calling for gender equality. It has been observed since the early 1900s and is now recognized each year on March 8. UN Women National Private Sector Specialist in Jamaica, Dr. Denise Chavans-Vogel, says even with the right to vote and hold public office and training, housing and legal reform measures, Jamaican policymakers still have a far way to go in establishing gender equality.
Girls are socialized to stay at home on the domestic front, paying attention to their school books, paying attention to education, using education as a means of social and economic mobility. Stay inside, study your books, don't get pregnant. Boys, on the other hand, are socialized differently. They have more freedom. There's an expression called tie the heifer and loose the bull. That's something that we need to look at very carefully, because gender inequalities also affect men negatively in many ways. It affects their sexual and reproductive health, for example, one of the reasons why they will have multiple sexual partners.
She notes that Jamaica is also party to several international conventions and agreements that give a voice to women worldwide. But Dr. Chavans-Vogel says despite success like having the highest percentage of women in middle management and 70% enrollment in the university, women are still at a disadvantage in the world of work and business.
There are still existing disadvantages and inequalities. There's that glass ceiling beyond which women don't ascend. So we have the 59% middle managers, but when we parse the statistics and look more closely, we realize that these women are not at executive management level. They're not at board level, and they're not in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. Women's labor participation is lower than that of men. Unemployment, in spite of the fact there's 70% women registered at University of the West Indies, unemployment is higher among women than it is among men. The gender pay gap also exists. Men earn more money than women for work of equal value.
Dr. Denise Chavans-Vogel personifies this year's International Women's Day theme, Balance for Better. She is passionate about gender and human rights transformation for key and vulnerable populations, including women and children, youth, and the LGBT. This female leader envisions a country where women enjoy freedom to make sexual and reproductive health choices and zero tolerance of violence in all forms. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, says the commemoration of International Women's Day, which each year presents us all with an opportunity to highlight new milestones in achievements that should be celebrated and promoted. In a statement to the media yesterday, the minister noted that Jamaica, like many other countries, is encouraged by improvements in levels of women's empowerment and gender equality, but much remains to be done. The minister says there are still many hurdles impeding women and girls from ensuring they are not left behind in the pursuit of sustainable development goals. She added, quote, "To truly make progress internationally, actions must be taken locally to eliminate traditional stereotypical narratives concerning the role and importance of women." End quote. Head of Bureau Gender Affairs Sharon Robinson has outlined a list of activities centered around the celebration of International Women's Day.
The first one is a breakfast that UNDP is having, and that's looking at gender equality seal and how is it that we have recognized private sector companies that have signed on to the gender equality seal. Right after that, we go to the Jamaica Stock Exchange to ring that bell for gender equality. And that's because we have been investing money through UN Women, that's the government of Jamaica working with UN Women, to look at the WEP principles, that's the Women's Empowerment Principles. After that, we go to the conference center where we'll have our shebang, as we want to call it. And that's a big celebration. We call it our banner event. And that will highlight successful women, women who have experienced lots of challenges, even at the community level, and have achieved great feats and have been able to wow other persons and inspire and motivate other persons. And we also have a segment that allows women who have achieved to share their story.
The US dollar on Thursday, March 7, ended trading at Jamaican $127.28, down by 7 cents. That's according to the Bank of Jamaica's daily foreign exchange trading summary. The Canadian dollar ended trading at Jamaican $97.20, up from $96.07. While the British pound sterling ended trading at $167.06, down from $168.51. In regional news, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says it stands ready to rescue the ailing Venezuelan economy. However, IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde says the task is so monumental that it would mean financial help from other international players. Speaking on the Economist radio show on Thursday, she said that as soon as the legitimate authority in that country asks, then the IMF would step in. Also, she said that the IMF has not made a decision about recognizing a new government in Venezuela.
A monumental job on our hands, because this is a country that has not opened its door to the IMF for the last 15 years. So we have not conducted any of the annual audit that we do on all our members in the institution. So there is a lot of due diligence that we're going to have to do in a very expedited manner. I think it will be fundamentally important because we play a catalyst role, and the amount of financing that will be needed is, significant. Our wallet will not be sufficient. We will open our wallet, we will put our brain to it, and we will make sure that our heart is in the right place to help the poorest and the most exposed people. But it's going to require significant financing from all the international community.
In Guyana, the head of the newly formed political party is warning that the country is in danger of sliding into a dictatorship if the deadline for elections is missed. Neil Marks of Newsroom Guyana has that report.
At a press conference in Georgetown Wednesday, Lennox Schumann, a former Amerindian leader looking to become president, insisted that the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM must hold elections in accordance with the constitutional deadline. Elections are due by March 21st, following the passage of the no-confidence motion. The deadline cannot be extended unless the opposition agrees by way of a parliamentary vote. Government commissioners are insisting on a house-to-house registration to produce a new list ahead of elections, but that process can take up to 8 months and go well beyond the constitutional deadline for elections.
There's no provision in there that stipulates that GECOM has to go out and sanitize or not sanitize. What it says in the Constitution is that elections will be called within 90 days. And our view, and based on the legal guidance that we have, is that that condition is there regardless of what GECOM's status is, regardless of what the list says, whether it is sanitized or not sanitized. The Constitution demands that elections are held within 90 days. Now, what we have seen is a body that should be operating independently and with integrity has strayed from its mandate in that sense. They are not operating as a constitutional body. They seem to be taking partisan lines, and I say that without reservation.
Schumann warned of the consequences to the nation if elections are not held by the constitutional deadline.
When we start having de facto governments, what is going to happen is we are sliding into dictatorship. And I think that these things need to be dealt with very, very clearly, and it needs to be dealt with in the interest of the nation.
Meanwhile, Schumann reiterated that he has applied to give up his Canadian citizenship in view of the constitutional stipulation that a person cannot be an elected member of the National Assembly and hold allegiance to a foreign power at the same time.
In sports, we look to cricket. Incumbent Cricket West Indies President Dave Cameron and his administration have lost their focus in the last 6 years. That's the view of Cameron's challenger Ricky Skerridge, who says the board is embroiled in a number of issues with stakeholders of the game while the key players suffer. He was speaking on an online media conference in Jamaica.
Things that jumps out is the fact that Cricket West Indies is fighting too many battles with too many stakeholders. The only battles we should be fighting of any sort of contention should be on the field of play. The grassroots cricket, the development requirements, the coaching development, the high performance system, all of the key ingredients that are necessary, that are essential for building what I would call a sustainable approach to cricket development, so that we are producing over the next several years and into the foreseeable future all of the future young players and all of the future young West Indians who love cricket and who are proud of cricket, whether they have become stars or not. Unfortunately, Cricket West Indies has lost its focus on cricket.
In the meantime, President Cameron is expected to host a forum next week where he will outline his vision and make a pitch to the public for the continuation of his presidency. In athletics, defending champions Exclelsior Girls and Calabar High start favorites as they retain their Digicel Anthric Corporate Area Championship crowns as Day 2 meets starts today inside the National Stadium. The Corporate Area Championship, which is the 4th stop of 5 in the Digicel Grand Prix Series, should be an intriguing one from top honors and the winning prize of $250,000. In football, Michelle Adamlecon and Lisa Quarry Co-founders of the Reggae Girls Foundation says plans are now being made to start a football academy for young women in Jamaica. She said that the academy would serve to develop young girls from the tender age of 6 years old for future national teams, as well as provide scholarships for Jamaica's female footballers. Ada Mullican is the president and executive director of the foundation. She says the academy would raise the profile of the game not only in Jamaica but also across the region. Quarry, an attorney, said the foundation, established in 2018, is aimed at supplying the next line of girls for the national team and help to qualify for the next World Cup. And that's the news on PBCJ. Pleasant viewing.